Our topic is on the high-speed rail. The Proposition 1A, or the Safe Reliability High-Speed Passenger Train Bond Act for the 21st century, was on the November 4, 2008 ballot in California as a legislatively referred bond act where it was approved. Proposition 1A approved the issuance of a $9.95 billion of general obligation bond. This money is supposed to partially fund an 800-mile high-speed train under the supervision of the California High-Speed Rail Authority. The train, if built, will run between San Francisco and Los Angeles, with Anaheim, California designed as the southern terminus of the internal segment of the high-speed train system. Estimates are that the train system, if it is built, will be completed in 2030, and that it will take passengers between San Francisco and Los Angeles in about 3 hours. High-speed rails seemed like a good idea when it was approved by voters back then, just as the financial crisis hit. So what's changed since then? Everything. First of all, there is a clear lack of funding. It will cost way more than they say. Not only have their estimates gone up from the previously stated, but even their most recent estimates are not true to the actual cost of building the high-speed rail. Realistic cost far outnumbers the $68 billion. A more accurate estimate was produced in late 2012 by California Common Sense, a policy analysis program in Los Altos. It assumed meager federal funding and took into account the long-term interest the state would pay on money borrowed through the bonds issued. The cost estimate was $203 billion. This means at first they said that it would take $68 billion to build the high-speed rail, and then it turns out that it was going to cost $203 billion to build the high-speed rail. And they still have not accounted for all of the funds necessary. They still haven't accounted for all of the money that they would need in order to completely build the high-speed rail. In its 2004 draft business plan, the HSRA only identified a total of $10 billion in funding available to support the construction of the IOS. The plan states that an additional $21 billion will need to be identified in order to complete the initial operating segment. They have already begun construction of the IOS and have still not accounted for a large portion of the financials. The state is likely to be the only source of additional funding to address the $21 billion shortfall identified by the HSRS. That means that it cost $203 billion to build the high-speed rail, and they only currently have $10 billion of funding available, which means that the rest of the funding needed would have to come from the state that it isn't even accountable for, that they haven't yet stated that they have. In addition, the peer review group commissioned under Prop 1A to analyze the HSR for lawmakers recommended that the legislature refuse to authorize the state bonds that would pay for a major part of the General Valley segment, as it would be futile. All due to the lack of adequate funding, a definite business model, appropriate management resources, and other problems, it would represent an immense financial risk on the part of the state of California. It means that if the state has to fund the rest of the high-speed rail, considering they only have $10 billion and they still need billions more, then it would financially hurt California, because they have to pay billions of money that aren't accounted for the high-speed rail. Secondly, there's a history of mismanagement in the high-speed rail. The California High-Speed Rail Authority is an independent authority consisting of 9-member boards appointed by the legislature and governor. They're responsible for the planning and construction and the high-speed rail train system that would link the state's major population centers. For the high-speed rail to be built, they have too little oversight in the management according to the state auditor. The state auditor said that the rail authority inadequately manages its many contractors. She says the project's financing is increasingly risky and its oversight inadequate. As one example, Howell said it violated a state rule prohibiting agencies from splitting contracts to avoid competitive bidding requirements, dividing $3.1 million in information technology services into 13 different contracts with vendors over 15 months. That's saying that the high-speed rail authority is supposed to be in charge of managing all of the construction and managing where they're gonna get their money from, but they don't have all of the things they should have managed figured out, such as the money. Also, there's not enough government oversight. The HSR is a design-build project. The design-build is a project delivery method in which the project owner contracts with the private general contractor to both design and build the project. We note, however, contracts with a private general contractor to both design and build the project. For example, the state must succeed some amount of control over how the project is delivered. This begs the question, how will the HSRA keep the right-of-way and utility relocation plans on schedule to avoid cost work delays? Which means that if they haven't figured out where exactly they're gonna build some of their tracks, and if they can't figure it out, it might cost them more money than they would expect, which would go into this issue again, they wouldn't have enough money to fund it. Thirdly, there is a question of whether the rail will even generate an income for the state. Likely not, because the ridership will be too low and the rail will have to be subsidized by the government. Public transportation does not decrease the personal vehicle travel. Most research finds that investing in public transportation does little to reduce personal vehicle travel, but increasing the gasoline tax and implementing congestion prices will create winners and losers, and may disproportionately impact low-income drivers. This means that just because they have a more readily available train that they say will be faster and more cost-effective doesn't mean that people are going to stop driving their own cars to get to the destinations that they have.